Hello, my name is Josh Hansen. I'm a strategist at McCann Canada.
I'm Emily McLaren King, Vice President, Group Account Director at McCann Canada, and I work out of our Toronto office.
My name's Athena Laljee. I'm a Creative Director at McCann Canada, working out of the Toronto office.
Truth well told, something that we talk about a lot, and I think truth at the core of everything that we do is a real part of why it's been such a meaningful career for me here and why McCann does so well.
We're going to be talking about Kids Help Phone, Feel Out Loud, a project that we have been working on for the past couple of years, really since we first met the client in 2021.
We are so lucky to have a great relationship with the client lead at Kids Help Phone, Rebecca Stutley. As Josh said, from the very beginning, when we started working with them as a part of the pitch process, it was clear that we had aligned intent for what we were trying to do. And she's so passionate about what she does and so passionate about the marketing and advertising side of things that just makes working together fun, and we're doing good while we do it.
Fun in terms of enjoying what you do is obviously important so that you don't hate your life and you don't want to come into the office every day. But fun is important in terms of the way we connect with people too, because, you can say what you like, but people remember how you make them feel at the end of the day. And if they feel good, if they feel positive, then that really sticks with them.
Since even before we started working with Kids Help Phone, I think one of the things we realized is how critical an organization they are in this country. There's a massive deficit between what our healthcare system provides young people when it comes to mental health support and what Kids Help Phone, in fact, does every single day. So as soon as we started actually working with them and realizing the depth of that, we started to realize how creative problem solving again could help them just reach more people, whether that be the young people they serve or adults who we call caring adults who have a vested interest in our young people's future.
It's really inspiring to now be able to look back at everything we've done, but also the road we've paved for the work to come.
It's awesome to have you here at Start Well for Canadians Create, where we're showcasing Canadian agencies and their unique approaches to creative solutions, and hopefully sharing these stories with the world so that it kind of like resonates with people, not only to learn more about our creative sector, but also to realize that we're not so different and some Canadian talents might be applicable all over the world and relevant to them. So I'm very excited to dig into this case study because it's something I think that is globally relevant in terms of the topic matter that we're going to discuss, but also unique to Canada in terms of the organization, right? That was your partner on it. So you want to just kick it off? What are we talking about today?
Talking about Kids Help Phone. Kids Help Phone is Canada's only 24/7, 365 e-mental health support for young people in multiple languages. They do amazing work. They have such an incredible passion for supporting young people in all stages of a mental health journey. They recognize that there's a crisis, a youth mental health crisis in Canada, and they're working really hard to address it. And we're just really proud to be on that journey with them.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. So kids, for the people that are watching at home, that's you. I'll cut that out maybe.
Leave it in.
Who don't know what Kids Help Phone is. Like, let's set up the organization.
Yeah, that's a good question because they've changed. I think one of the things that's been really cool about being on this journey with them for at least the past couple of years is seeing really how much they've changed. So what is it, like the 80s, going back to like 35? 1989. So the tail end of the 80s, like emerged essentially as like a phone line, right? Kids Help Phone, a direct line kids could reach out to. I think when we joined them 2021, so like 3 or 4 years ago, they have been on a pretty significant change journey in how they make themselves available to young people. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's important to understand as an organization, they are really there to support change for young people themselves. What's really incredible about them is they see the kids themselves as really doing all of the work, right? Which means young people have to identify themselves to reach out to Kids Help Phone. How they can do that is really any way these days, right? It can be text, online chat. There's peer-to-peer connections. There's a ton of resources at kidshelpphone.ca. So they've really become more of like an e-mental health service.
Yeah, you mentioned that
Yeah.
e-mental health.
And that's kind of what that means, right? It's not a phone, just a phone line anymore.
Okay. How did you guys get to know them?
I think, I mean, for those of us who grew up in Canada and in Toronto, they were a part of my growing up. But I think as a part of this project, the business went up for a pitch in 2001, and we were thrilled to participate. And from the very beginning, it was this like collaborative, couldn't wait to dive in and get into it. And then we hit the ground running right away in 2021.
Context too, right? Like 2020, 2021 in this country, right? Like, so mental health, our own mental health, the nation's mental health, I think was kind of on everyone's mind. So I think from the moment we first started talking to them, part of the reason we just kind of got involved right away was it was one thing what we were all going through, work, going to and from. I have a daughter, but still didn't realize, I think, the impact. And when we first started talking to them, what that moment in time, well, the reverberations we're feeling across like literally everything still today, but for young people was a unique thing. Being home from school, that not having that socialization. And it really was a time when the service of Kids Help Phone suddenly just like had a huge multiplier effect, and they were being reached out to way more than even just the previous year. Like 2019 to 2020 was a huge increase.
Like, and you talk about transformation, like they had to change the way they showed up for young people in the world when that call and text and like outreach volume went up. They launched new services. They like doubled down on what they were trying to do. And when they came to us in 2021, they had all this evolution and their brand still looked the same. They had the same logo that some of us remembered from our childhood, and they wanted their brand to reflect who they were as an organization, and what an incredible challenge for us.
So the initial kind of ask that went out to tender, to pitch, that you responded to, right? Like, what was it? What were they looking for? How did they articulate that ask?
They wanted to show up in the world the way they were as an organization. So new identity, some work around design, which we did with them, new platform, new way of really showing up in young people's worlds. That was the challenge for us.
Okay, so there's a relevancy issue that they needed help solving. Or not relevancy, but access to kind of audience. Like, was that
really awareness?
And I think the brand had evolved to meet young people in their worlds today. I mean, the organization had, but the brand needed to catch up.
So they were ready, and they were like, now how do we do this? We need help to activate.
There's probably a bit of philosophy worth inserting here a little bit, which is like, I think we think of often charities as almost trying to run themselves into obsolescence, right? Because like we want to solve the cancer issue, or again, at least I realize these are long journeys but I think what Kids Help Phone kind of recognize with mental health is there's no endpoint, right? There's no like, oh, success, mental health. It is part of your ever evolving journey as a person. And so they're always trying to do a few things, right? Always trying to make sure young people know that they're there. So there's always an awareness thing. There's a relevance and making sure that young people see them as a place to reach out to, right? Again, we talk about this, but kids, it's unlike some other sort of, I'm trying to think, what's the space, like charitable or like health space, where like you get injured, you're like, oh, I'm going to go to a hospital, or I need some type of special treatment if you're a young person. Whereas Kids Help Phone, kids themselves have to see themselves in the organization and trust it, believe that if they reach out, they're going to be safe. Like, we're talking about some of the most vulnerable things imaginable. Right. And so
it's essentially social utility, and to educate the population on its availability, but develop the trust in it at the same time. Yeah, it's tough. It's like saying, okay, 911 is now, here's a new 911, basically.
Well, that was part
funny
of
you should get it too. Okay.
They used to be known as like the 911 for kids. But again, they had become so much more like it's not just a crisis line. You can talk, you can call in to talk about, just a bad day that you had, anything. There's no feeling or issue too big or too small. And that's really what we needed to communicate as well to young people.
Okay, so you guys kind of saw this. You're very excited. You presented something. Did they, as they became a client, talk about why you particularly stood out as an agency? Why they wanted to work with you particularly?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we've talked about the chemistry even from the very beginning and aligned intent and sort of us understanding them as an organization or seeking to understand them as an organization. And I think they felt that in the room. That's something that we've talked about a little bit, but
Yeah, it's a hard question to
Yeah.
answer, I think, to some degree, but
Price.
yeah, right. I think, listen, we took a vested interest. We tried to do as much as we could before we'd even first met them. I think some of those things you do as an agency to try and demonstrate that you really care and you want to get involved,
Of course.
and just and really trying to understand the challenges they face. Like we've touched on it a little bit, but like try and really internalize and understand that a little bit. And I think we were open, and then they were super receptive to like sharing and challenging us and pushing the conversation forward. And again, they're at this sort of unique moment, right, where they have done so much work internally as an organization to really reach young people, and then needing a partner to help bring that to life sort of in the real world, the way people would experience it. And I think all those conversations, how we brought data towards them, how they shared their data with us, I think, sometimes these intangibles, right? Sometimes things click.
Yeah, you were able to start working with them right away, very naturally, it sounds like.
Yeah. And this is where a little bit, I think, our premise as an agency, like all agencies have their own sort of like approach, but this idea that we've been around for a long time, the idea that like you look for the truth at the center and then find the best way to tell that story, the whole truth well told sort of mantra. Right. We don't have, with them, you don't really have. It's about bringing Kids Help Phone to light, really is the most, again, making sure every young person knows they're available, making sure every adult knows that if they're interested, they can help. Mm-hmm. I think that whole piece really works well with our ideology.
So should we dig in? You've got some materials for us
Sure.
to look at. Let's look at it, because I'll have a ton of questions to do with, how you did this and all that stuff as well once we look at it.
Yeah, this is a quick snapshot of the rebrand that we created, and it was based on this design idea of help in all sizes. The fact that we're here for any issue, big or small. We're here for all types of young people in any moment, and that really brought us to this kind of adaptable, free, modular brand identity that has.
This looks like a tapestry from Ghana.
Super colorful. Yeah, right?
Yeah, so it's like we created this expanding logo that could, expand and contract depending on the situation or the types of feelings it houses, like you see there. Yell, laugh, sigh, feel out loud. Different colors. We've got tons of different colors in the brand guides as well. Just because we felt like no single color was going to cut it, no single, just as there's no single feeling or reason why young people call in. So it really needed to be something that could resonate with different types of youth and all across Canada, coast to coast.
What would you say about the uniqueness of the situation that enabled you, maybe even the client and their flexibility that enabled you to do something like take a word mark and make it like anything?
Yeah, we talk a lot about audiences for clients, but Kids Help Phone is really there for all young people across Canada, coast to coast to coast. And you said it, there's no one kind of young person. There's probably not even 1,000 kinds of young people. So to be able to come back to them with something that felt as dynamic and diverse as the audience of young people that they exist for is something that they had to be open to with us. But also I think that they very much saw as a reflection of being there for young people across Canada.
It's pretty bold of a client to like break with pretty solid conventions in like branding and design, right? Of like picking a one or two colors that you're going to air quote own and like lean into and stuff. And I think as an organization to be so bold to be like, we're going to break some of those conventions, but really in the best interest of who we serve, which like Emily and Athena already talked about, but it's credit to them to be willing to say like, oh, we're going to take a leap and do things a little bit differently. But again, that diversity of audience, that diversity of need state, all those sort of things. It's one of the things we were really like, how do we make this feel like a brand that's for young people? Because again, it's on them to reach out, right? No one is taking them to Kids Help Phone. So it really had to be something they could see themselves in.
Yeah, take ownership of the experience just by looking at a message like this.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it. Let's continue.
Perfect. And so, yeah, with this hand in hand with the rebrand, came Feel Out Loud, the new brand platform. So really we were looking again for something that could help unlock hope in young people's worlds and really redefine what Kids Cell Phone is. It's not just 911 for kids. It's a place where you can come and just express yourself, share your feelings. And it was all driven by this insight that, which something we all know, when you keep your feelings inside, when you bottle things up, that weighs you down. That can make, an okay day terrible because you just haven't gotten it off your chest. And really, that's what Kids Cell Phone is here to help young people with, to just talk through it. There's plenty of stories where, young people have called in and not even said a single word. They just sit there on the phone with someone to listen to them. And then they, talk or sing a song when they're ready. So that there's really no right way. And we wanted to invite people, young people, to feel empowered, to let their feelings out and know that they're not alone and that there's always a place where they can express themselves. And so that led us to Feel Out Loud, the brand platform. And I'll play this in the background because it is a little bit long, but this was the launch spot that we went out with to launch this new brand platform.
Okay, launch spot. So what does that mean? How do you launch this spot? This is TV?
Yeah,
This is what,
this is
where did you put it?
I mean, we put it everywhere. The brand, because it was also the launch of the new identity, it lived in every outdoor medium available. We talk a lot about showing up in young people's worlds. So we wanted to be in their worlds. We wanted to be in outdoor. We wanted to be in video games. We wanted to be in social. We wanted to be all the places where young people are having feelings so that they knew that Kids Cell Phone was there for them in those moments. So yes, film, and yes, every other media basically that you can imagine.
Taking cues from that, what you did with the word mark and the malleability of the kind of brand iconography.
Mm-hmm.
How did your approach to video assets reflect that, if at all? Like, is this a singular video? Is this a video made up of a collection of stories and narratives that you kind of intercut?
Yeah, so this video specifically features 3 different narratives, but you'll notice there's cues of the brand colors, like right now when his face lights up with this kind of raspberry tone, and it's kind of revealed in the end that these lights on their faces are actually them connecting with Kids Cell Phone. So that's a way of bringing the brand into this film. But then as we get into the other campaign assets, which you'll see as well, we're using all the different colors, and we never really associate, I will say, specific colors with specific feelings. It's not about that. It's not like, happy equals yellow, because it's not that simple. People have different feelings and different kind of layers to things. So it's more of just a way of bringing the brand into the story to show that, again, you're not alone. There's someone you can connect with.
It's very interesting, actually. I think the idea of stitching together like visual messaging and some form of motion picture with the product, with the access to it. That's smart. That's really cool. Always trying to cue people to say that this is something that's there. It's there on the screen. It's there through the screen, etc.
Yeah.
Especially when you feel like your feelings might be just taking over your world and it's overwhelming, right? Like that kid almost, struggling in the water. It's like we just looked to different metaphors as well, because feelings are funny. You can't you could maybe paint a picture or write it in words, but everyone feels their feelings differently. And like the interesting creative challenge is always like, how do you bring that to life and depict how someone's feeling? So we make sure a lot more youth connect with that content and see themselves and their feelings in that content.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. Listen, I can certainly say I think as an organization, be it like McCann, we've learned so much working with Kids Help Phone in strategy. Every discipline at an agency is trying to connect with people ultimately, right? Doesn't matter what it's about. It's just that with this particular subject matter being youth mental health and this particular client being in that space, I think we feel the responsibility in just a different way. And I think they've helped give us language. They've shared with us how they connect with young people. And I think they've just been very giving to us in the sense of what they're able to share. And I think it's influenced certainly other projects I've worked on, even with different clients, in that sort of real appreciation for the audience and the moment in which, like Athena's talked about it, right? The moment in which they're experiencing it. Again, full credit to like, I think Athena and the team in the sense of like being able to take 3 words and a way summarize for young people what they can do, and in the same way connect with what the organization again Kids Help Phone really does. Like, it's pretty cool. It's not easy, and I think like, listen, it's spelled dividends in the sense of like what it's been able to do for Kids Help Phone. But full credit, it has not been an easy task.
Coming up with that though, what was the process there?
That was a fun journey. It took us quite a while. I mean, and it was a completely different team at the time too. We were all jamming together, and I think we had some, looking back now, some not so great options, which at the time we were like, oh, this is great. Like, one of the options was feel freely. And we took it to the CCO at the time, Josh Stein, and he was like, that's terrible. We're like, what? Are you sure? No, it sounds pretty good. And he's like, no. And it was like one of those late night, brainstorms. We were all on a call with the CDs back then as well, Mike Schumann and Gail Pack, and we were just talking about it. And it's like, what if it was, someone said something that set something off, and we were like, what if it was feel out loud? And I remember Mike going, that's interesting. That could be it. And so that was one of the options. And I still don't remember. We had a deck with 3 options shortlisted. Feel out loud was one of them. I don't even remember the other 2.
I don't remember. I remember seeing that. It's one of those things everyone reacted to the first time they saw it. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. I remember the deck, but all I remember is the feel out loud.
Yeah. Like, I've totally forgotten what the other 2 options were, because every time we chatted about it again, it was like, it came to a point where it was obvious, like, it's feel out loud. Like, the other 2 don't even matter. We're just like, you have to show some options. So we've got these options, but yeah.
Did we show when we presented to the client? Did we show
options? I think we did, but everybody grab it. Those ideas. You see them in an internal. Right, you come up with them in the room. You present them to a client, and right away everybody's like, "Yes, that's it." And it connected a lot of dots that we had been working to connect, and it gave us the flexibility, I think, that we needed to be able to talk about all the feelings and all the young people, but also to be able to resonate with an adult audience, which we haven't talked a lot about yet. But Kids Help Phone relies so much on the support of donors to make sure that they can continue to do all the amazing things that they do for young people every day, and to be able to continue to innovate and do new things. So to come up with a platform that's going to have that deep meaning for young people and inspire that trust, but to also be able to resonate with adults in a way that they would feel compelled to support this cause, and to make sure that Kids Help Phone exists in the world, like, that is a careful needle to thread. So I think when we landed there, it was pretty like, oh yeah.
Yeah, we didn't really touch on the adults too much, did we? In the sense of like, this brand also has to speak to them,
right?
And as an organization, they need to use it truly as a platform to talk to donors, to talk to other corporations, to get their investment. Like, it has to be elastic.
Yeah, and I think what works so well with Feel Out Loud for both audiences is that, like, really it has hope at its core. It's empowering, and like paints a positive picture of what could be. When it's such a release when you finally let your feelings out, and it captures that hope that we knew from strategy we wanted to capture in whatever this platform was going to be, and yeah, that's what made it work so well, I think.
Okay, so in terms of the kind of docket in front of you of responsibilities, right? Once you started getting working, what were the kind of like, I don't know, I always have difficulty kind of like putting this into words because I'm not within the agency world particularly, and everyone kind of has,
that's refreshing.
Yeah, right. Everyone has their own way of doing this, perhaps, I hope. But yeah, how do you define kind of like the top level deliverable buckets for this? Because you're building a new brand and a messaging kind of device, and then how does that break out into?
I was gonna say,
we could talk a little bit. Maybe it's worth talking a little bit too, even just like practically how the sort of like launch happened too. And this is again a little bit where it exposes a little bit how Kids Help Phone kind of like sees the world, which Athena was already touching on, which is like, it doesn't probably won't come as a huge surprise, but connecting with the youth audience is also like paramount.
Right.
So even the way this idea, like at the very beginning, Kids Help Phone was so emphatic that like the first connection with this platform has to be with young people themselves. And then sort of like, so building a strategy of being like, how do we ensure young people see it first? Then it sort of rolls out to some of those other audiences, like eventually being adults, obviously, or like potential donors and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think at its core, the kids were like the first most, or young people, the first most important audience. That's the idea, to connect with them and then get pressure tested and then essentially rolled out. You were asking a good question. I lost my train of thought.
I'll bring it back.
Okay.
Well, because I think one of the things that is particularly interesting about Kids Help Phone is how we make sure that we're showing up in young people's worlds, and some of the journeying that we've done to be able to make sure that we can do that, and working with media partner. So Epitaph is their media agency. Great. Like just being able to jam together on making sure that we can figure out the way to show up in the right place with the right message.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of work done by the strategy team, like a colleague Ali, who's not here today, but like work done actually laying out like how. One of the things we spent time talking about, like, again, we talk about like connection points and stuff like that. And one of the things Ali worked on was not like typical media connections, but like how a young person might be feeling throughout any given sort of like escaping time of day or anything, just like moods and places where you might find that, like times you might be alone. Yeah, it's really smart. Like times you might be alone, where it might be more like a social video game thing, social moments, again, charting and mapping those feelings. And that led to like a whole bunch of different ways to kind of like see and bring ideas to life, which was really smart as well.
Yeah.
And we even had like, we built a brand document that defined what Feel Out Loud is, because like, some people might take it literally, right? Like, oh, like go scream out. And it's like, no, it's not. Like loud isn't about being loud, and like feeling isn't always about like using words necessarily. So we had this brand document that we built, and then that went to, because Kids Help Phone has so many partners and people they work with as well, right? So that went to so many people so that everyone was aligned about what Feel Out Loud was, and then they were empowered with the new guidelines as well to go ahead and roll it out in all their different touch points.
I mean, they have such an incredible array of partners who support them, with media, with agency services, with like, it really is like you can't even start a list of people who are invested in this organization. So I think when Athena was talking about this sort of toolkit that allows all the different people who do all the different things, like Josh talked a little bit about self-directed learning tools on their website, that is a big undertaking to flip that over into a new identity, and they do a lot of that stuff, and a lot of their social themselves. So really it was about building something that could be deployed by all the various people that need to know and love and understand and use it.
So everything from like reskinning the website to the logo that appears on a Smarties pack, to get young people to reach out, like every little touch point
Amazing.
Needed to change.
And they do a lot of that themselves, so being able to empower them with a toolkit to do those things and a system for the design and for the platform.
So this is interesting, because I think that this is also kind of a unique case example of how you work with client in this way to go a little deeper. And this is a theme that comes out of the show, right? I think it's a Canadian theme that is really about strength of relationship with client. In an ideal world, you have a great one. You don't want a client where you're like, okay, here's the work, goodbye, see you next year, maybe, if you have money.
Sure.
Right. That's terrible. But this also sounds like there's an opportunity to work with their internal marketing, whoever was your counterparts at their organization, to educate them on not just the work, but also, in other ways.
Actually, you know what? Bring it back to strategy for 2 seconds.
Sure.
I think like, they talk about democracies, electorates get the leaders they deserve kind of thing, which is slightly touchy for today. But like, clients kind of often get the work that they kind of deserve in many ways, right? Like, because it's nature, it is a relationship, it's all that sort of stuff. I think one of the things that was really cool, we didn't touch on it so much, but like at the core, this was at the very beginning, like it was a whole creative refresh, design, everything. It was also, we started at the beginning of like the entire brand, like looking at sort of all their brand, like all the statements, like missions, purpose, all that kind of stuff. And started from that the first steps were really meeting with them, their organization, their board, and spending a lot. We did all these like online workshops, day-long workshops, looking at their brand. Any material they share with us has been like, is either specific training materials that has been stripped of any context or awareness, or they use like versions of. So we've had the chance to listen in on things, which is part of their counselor training modules that again, built really specifically that you have no connection to any actual young people.
Right.
But yeah, actually that's a point worth noting. Like we really went to like stripped everything down. They were very open to looking and reflecting at their own brand, not just the aesthetics of it, but sort of like the underlying structure. So we had a bunch of workshops, worked on writing and articulating like a role for the brand. And I think one of the really most amazing things, and strategic work should live out in the world, right? Like it's in service of creating the most effective work out there. So it's neat sometimes when you see an organization take some of the language that the team worked on and actually became sort of like really core to them and how they share and talk internally, right? And like Athena talked about some of these ideas of hope and unlocking that hope for young people. Kathy, the CEO, has been incredible at really taking the language that we worked on strategically and embedding it in the organization. Like, I think that has to be like one of the highest compliments you can get in strategy, to see some of this stuff play out. So as that language took it to the board, such an advocate, Kathy was such an advocate, Kathy and Rebecca as such advocates for the work that we had done strategically. And then how that sort of like helps set up the creative work and playing out. So like, again, I think as an organization, they really took those sort of like those core pieces and operationalized it, which has helped when it came to sort of bring some of that creative platform to life.
It's interesting because not a lot of, I guess some organizations have it in a different capacity, but like a trained crisis responder, the counselors that work in Kids Help Phone have such an incredible like responsibility, but also to be able to talk to some of them like that is how we learn what we learn, right? Then they're so generous with sharing with us the process and the way that they think. So I think that really allowed us to sort of go deep and like talk about going deep into an organization. You're talking to people right down to the people who are talking to young people or interacting with young people.
Yeah, I mean, this is essential work for creating compelling branding. Is you have to understand stakeholders and the relationships that they have with organizations and otherwise. And unique, I think, in the agency world. I mean, it really depends on the client relationship that you said and how open they are. And also, I think, culture on both sides of the table.
Yeah, it's that squishy stuff, right? That's like how open. Listen, intimacy, right? Like we talk, intimacy is vulnerability, and when it comes down to any product, really making sure your agency knows the ins and outs, the good, the bad, and all of that sort of stuff means you have to be vulnerable. And I think that's where, listen, the subject matter is tough sometimes in dealing with this. It's not the same as some other products, but any client who's willing to really let you in, that's when some of the best stuff happens.
Yeah, and I think we let them in too. I mean, speaking of vulnerability, the amount of creative meetings we've had with them where we're saying, listen, it's not ready yet, but we're letting you into the kitchen. That was like the line we use all the time. And it was like, okay, like this is a safe space. We can chat about, things that aren't fully baked yet. And we're actually building this together, which is what made it so powerful.
Yeah, that's also that idea that I was suggesting of sharing, between the organizations, right? Because then so many lessons can be taught that aren't just instructive or prescriptive. They're experiential. Like you experience the evolution of this project together, and everyone takes away lessons.
Yeah,
very cool. Okay, so this goes out there, and this was at a tough time. This was during lockdown and pandemic.
Lockdown part 3, which
right. So just for our international audience that may not know this, right? Canada particularly had an interesting response to the COVID pandemic, and particularly in Ontario, we had perhaps the longest lockdown.
It was Ontario and Toronto was the longest, like 400 days of like lockdown.
Outside of China, maybe that was the longest.
Yeah, I'm not sure 100%, but I do. It was definitely, we're top 3 for sure.
So what that meant, of course, was that, people were isolated from each other and were particularly kind of prescribed by the government at various levels to stay home and to stay in there, if maybe social bubbles and stuff. But that's a long time.
Yeah.
And so you started this engagement in that time.
2021.
Yeah.
And at what point was all of this live? And you said started getting out to kids or youth.
So end of 2022 for young people, and then in 2023 it went adult facing. The launch of the movement, the Feel Out Loud movement, which really took it from something that was in young people's worlds and that we wanted them to own and feel ownership of, and put it out into the world in a way that adults could rally behind it and come together with incredible donations, and making sure that, you know, Kids Health Phone was able to continue to innovate and continue to deliver service in the way that they knew that they needed to, going through that crazy time, but also just because they've been around for 35 years. And
What did that look like? That, like, you know, approach to engaging adults in the dialogue?
they launched with an anthem with like 50 Canadian artists, a music video, and the platform. And it was a big moment to come out and say youth mental health is in crisis and we need your support. And it really was a movement. That Feel Out Loud continued right up until, you know, today, and continues to be out there in the world for young people and for adults.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then how much of this was around also kind of, was any of this messaging specifically targeted at, you know, families and tying those identities together, like adults and youth?
So I think it's one of those tricky things, right? Because like sometimes that relationship is the reason why a young person might be reaching out, right? I think like it's I think there are certain audiences that Kids Help Phone is particularly dialed into across the country. Like we talk to them as being equity deserving groups, those who like whether regionality, ethnicity, all those different things that might put an additional stress on a young person. I think like Kids Help Phone is super involved in their communities, and as an organization has unique programs that reach out to certain audiences, but like very focused on the young people themselves and making sure they know they have the resources and connection point. Like we talk about parents a lot, right? It's challenging because like it's one of those things where like parents are one of the most important audiences in many ways. Again, if parents could talk to the young people to know that this resource exists, like even the most amazing relationship between a parent or guardian and a young person doesn't mean that's everything is being shared back and forth, right? So I think compliment to parents who feel comfortable like sharing that. And then sometimes the parents or guardians can be the reason why you might need to reach out to, right? So I think definitely focus on the young people. When we talk about adults and we talk about caring adults as then those who might be invested in young people, their future, again, that unlocking that hope, that's an eclectic group, right? Because it's people who may have had an experience with mental health themselves, and maybe people in the space, and maybe parent or adults who just like have a vested interest in the success of young people. So we tend to think of that sort of like adult audience through those. So again, sort of like their different relationship.
Right.
The big thing is not trying to like alienate parents, obviously, right? But we don't tend to focus on parents that much. There are resources out there in the country that sort of like family piece is key.
But even then, like focusing on adults without necessarily, you know, targeting them as parents is still casting the net to reach parents, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where like we've got an awesome media partner too, who's look at Epitaph, who's looking for those different opportunities. It's tricky too. Like think in today's media environment, right? Like every single thing we do is probably seen by all different folks. Like you can't isolate a youth audience, right? Sure. There's certain places we know they're more likely. There's a Roblox example we looked at, which is like obviously a particularly youth space, social media, but like adults on TikTok, right? Like WhatsApp, any of those platforms are shared spaces. So being mindful of the stories and it's a really burden on creative, I think, in some ways of like trying to balance the most compelling message and way of bringing a story to life, but understanding that a young person could see that. And like some of the subject matter is really tough, right? Like things like self-harm, where you have to be mindful that you're trying to demonstrate a support but not encourage behavior, where even just any stimulus in and of itself could be sort of like valid. So yeah, it's a multitude of audiences in shared spaces of which the message is related and yet completely different. One's about like donating and one's about like reaching out.
So let's talk about the largest context, maybe. No, it's not the largest one. the geographic context.
Yeah.
We're in Canada,
Yeah.
right? Kids Help Phone primarily. You said growing up in Ontario, you would know it. Now with it becoming a digital thing, does it expand its reach to Canada?
Coast to coast to coast.
Okay.
That's the way that they talk about it. And it really is everywhere. I think the intent is text, phone, online, wherever you are in Canada, whatever time of day it is, whatever feeling you have, it really is ubiquitous. And I think it probably was when I was a kid too. My Ontario growing up is like very my experience.
Okay.
But I'm now coast to coast to coast is the way they talk about it, because it really is, and not just focused in the most densely populated areas, really all across Canada.
Things have changed in terms of accessibility of communication technology. Can you imagine?
Hugely.
When we were kids, there was one phone next to the kitchen on the wall. And you rotate.
Yeah.
We had old
I
phones.
know.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? Who are you calling? Oh, I'm
Don't worry about it.
homework stuff. Yeah, a lot has changed, which is great in making this the service available. Given that it's a Canadian thing, and this project was looking at youth across the country and the service for them, what would you say about that uniquely typifies your approach to it from a Canadian perspective, if at all?
Sure. Listen, I can talk a little bit, just sort of, I think one of the things understanding is like Canada is an incredibly diverse and eclectic place, from the number of languages that are spoken, the experiences someone may bring from elsewhere to this place, the experiences you might bring because of a different regionality, whether that be rural isolation, urban dynamics, like literally it's a country that has rapidly urbanized. And so you see like all these there's a lot of different dynamics at play. And again, even going back to everything from the expression of feel out loud and how it's like inherently inclusive and a kind of like action oriented to all those sort of pieces. Canada's, and it's just physically huge, right? Like that's so that you take all those different pieces, it kind of is a reason to break some of those classic design principles, all those. It presents a unique challenge and unique challenge for Kids Help Phone and their ability to provide those services, who those counselors are. We talked a little bit about some of those really particular groups who they've focused specific services for and specific programs. But yeah, it's kind of like it's classic, right? The thing that makes Canada so special is also the thing that presents some of its biggest challenges. And from its genesis, Kids Help Phone has been about that. It's just their ability to deliver on it now. And as they push more and more and using sort of some of what they've learned, some of the data that they've accumulated over all this time as a way to continue to build out those services, again, for just the most eclectic group of people, probably really in the world. Like I know there's some stuff of like, there are some cities in the world, I think Miami technically has more residents born outside. Like there's a few of those interesting stats, right? Like number of people born outside the country. I think Miami's like number one, but some Canadian cities are very close. But what's interesting is the number of countries, right? Sure. We quickly get to like 190 different countries. Yeah. And so like, it's pretty crazy in that regard that they're able to provide meaningful mental health resources for all of them.
Has in that, in Canada is a microcosm for the world in its diversity reflection. And this being something that's a pervasive kind of, let's say, across humanity applicable thing, right?
Nothing more universal than mental health, maybe.
Yeah. How has the world received this? And have you heard that from Kids Help Phone itself in terms of with this new brand and this new, maybe the visibility that you've brought to their service? Have they been able to, or have they, like, have people reached out to them that are in similar work from around the world? And has this raised their visibility in that sense?
They do a lot of work already around the world. I mean, they have such a depth of knowledge as an organization in this space. So to be able to share that with other organizations like that around the world. But I think also there's some bits and pieces, accelerator to the Power Kids Help Phone. There's some things that really have allowed them to speak on a global stage. They were at Davos this year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, I think, yeah.
Listen, to touch a little bit on the whole like Canadian dynamic too, right? Like as we have publicly funded healthcare, I think this is one of these things that's really easy to think is sort of like held within the system of healthcare we have, and what Kids Help Phone is kind of, or at least certainly made very clear to me that I didn't know before, is like this sort of like deficit that exists in service and where they really fill a really important gap. And that's been a big part of what they talk to like our government about and stuff, is like the role and importance, and then sort of spreading that message a little bit more around the world of like what a resource like this. And again, the data that they've collected is really powerful. And I think how they can continue to be both an influence and a bit of a role model in that regard will be exciting to see.
Speaking of data, okay, so how has your work enabled them? If it's like any top line stats or data in terms of use of platform, the ability, if there were new channels that you opened up, for example, like through a Roblox, how you say it? Roblox app.
I get it wrong every time.
Like
Roblox, yeah.
Like, has there been engagement across the board to the point that
I don't think there's work that I'm prouder of that I've done in my career with these guys and with the whole team. I think some of the things that they've been able to achieve as an organization while they've had the Feel Out Loud platform, number one trusted charity in Canada. So a little award win, I think, on the next slide of this, which we, obviously feel pretty good about.
Nice.
But I think just being able to enable them to do what they need to do and to help them continue to raise critical funds to do what they need to do and continue to make themselves more accessible, even though we're not the ones making them more accessible, but making young people more aware of what they exist for and being able to reach out. I think that is something that I personally feel pretty good about.
Yeah, same. I mean, like, and in terms of equity deserving groups, like being able to, beyond the grand, big national scale work, being able to show up for very specific groups, whether it's sports like we did with 6-8 last year, or young people who are struggling with self-harm. Like, we've really had the opportunity to like get in there and show up in special, meaningful ways, even by branding their Rise Up program, which is specifically for Black youth. Like, that had its own identity because we wanted to make sure that it resonates with the community. So that's been one of the really exciting pieces for me as well, is like, yes, doing this big brand work, but then like honing in on specific groups and making sure they feel seen through the work as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, listen, it's a bit of a case for why brands do matter. And I think one of the things that we set out at the very beginning is like, we've talked about a little bit, right? Like, there's a few really important things. Young people reaching out, right? We always want to increase that number, the more, because mental health is health, and it's not just the terrible things or the great things. It's all from the smallest to the biggest. So trying to impact the likelihood to reach out, that connection to the brand. Again, we talk about doesn't matter what brand you're talking about, that emotional connection is really important.
Right.
You could argue in this case it's more important than almost any other. And so those are two things we've been able to impact, that emotional connection young people feel and their likelihood to reach out. So that's two really important things. And then for this organization to exist, they need funding, right? And that comes from corporations, that comes from the government, and that comes from people like us sitting around the table. So to be able to impact those three things I know it means a lot to them. It certainly means a lot to us. And yeah, and it's an example of why the sort of that malleable, squishy thing like branding still plays a role.
Any end notes on a macro level that you can take away from this case in terms of how you're able to work as Canadians with Canadian clients in a unique way?
I mean, at McCann, we talk a lot about the power of enduring brands and brand platforms. And I think this Feel Out Loud is a really great example of one that we'll continue to see grow and evolve and do what it needs to do. Do I think that that's specific to Canada? No, I don't think I do. But I think the relationships that we've built, again, never having worked outside of Canada, I don't know, but it feels pretty special to be able to build the kind of relationships that we've built with these clients and others. And maybe that is a uniquely Canadian thing.
I can maybe chime in as like the newcomer in the room.
Yes.
The one thing that I so appreciate about working here versus in other places is just the, I don't know, general level of respect people have for each other. And which, maybe sounds like a little thing, but people are just like kinder, more understanding, vulnerable, like open to collaborating and working together versus, I'm the expert, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is, take it or leave it kind of approach, which is, I don't know if it's a McCann thing because I've only worked at McCann in Canada, but yeah, it's
So you came from outside of Canada?
yeah.
Where are you from?
I was based in Dubai, so I was born and raised in Dubai, worked there most of my career.
Just crave the cold. in
Totally.
winter. Ready to ski outside of a shopping mall.
I'll take the cold any day over like 50 degrees in the summer. But yeah, it's more collaborative, I find.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing your case to Canadians Create. I
Thanks
think
for
it's
having us.
awesome to hear this story. And it's a story that's going to evolve, right? Because there's continuing work, like you said, that you're doing with this client.
Watch out next month.
Future's
It's coming.
exciting.
Yeah.
Donate kidshelpphone.ca.